John didn't know what I was going to preach today. You're going to see there's some connections happening here that God's been working on, even if the technology has been going. Now, I know something about myself that I reckon you know about yourself as well. It's something that lies deep in our heart that we're not always that keen to share. And I actually think it's at the heart of every human being. And it's this. There's a large part of me that is selfish. I don't want to always help others. I don't want to do the dishes. I don't want to do the washing. Becky, be quiet. So when the title of the church service is service, we can come in thinking, oh no, another sermon to make me feel guilty. But that's not my aim today. For some reason, Jesus saw service as essential in the elements of discipleship. It was an essential element of the Christian life. That in choosing to serve others, we are somehow formed. We're shaped. We're sanctified. In serving, we are being made holy. We are being made into people who are fit for heaven. So what is it about service that transforms us? Most of us actually have this innate belief that happiness comes when we get what we want. Happiness comes when I get what we want. Now, anyone who was over 50 was actually drilled to know that that's selfishness and that's bad. Everyone over 50 can say, that's what we were taught? Yeah. Meanwhile, for the last 50 years, we've been drilled by the advertising agencies to say that happiness comes when we get what we want. That's what advertising soaks us in. You're not going to be happy until you get this thing. Now, this phrase is partially true. We know from research that when you get something new, a new car, a new toy, Father's Day undies, looking forward to them next week, that you have an endorphin rush that lasts for 1 to 3 days, maybe 1 to 3 hours, maybe just 1 to 3 minutes with the Father's Day undies. But then it's over. Desire never says enough. We're soon chasing the next shopping high. And like all addictions, you need a bigger toy, a newer car, more colourful undies to get the rush. Now, as an aside, the way to disempower this desire is to reduce its diet. It's actually to feed it monthly, not daily. If you want to say, how do I get out of that trap? Now, I want to distinguish, and I want to help us with this, to distinguish between needs and wants. Because it is very healthy to have our needs met. Food, clothing, shelter, care, love. All of that is good for our emotional health. But presents and prizes, gifts and gratuities, they're good for us like lollies are, an occasional treat. We need food, but we don't need caviar every time. We need clothing, but they don't have to be their designer clothes. We need shelter, but we don't need that 17-story mansion every time. These are supposed to be occasional treats. Because we don't want to get on that consumerist treadmill. Getting what I want promises us happiness, but it actually delivers dissatisfaction. And that's actually a key item in marketing and advertising. First, we have to convince people they're dissatisfied. Your life is terrible. But with this brand new product from Acme, for 5 easy installments of they all agree that if you pursue your own desire, that is actually the road to unhappiness, dissatisfaction. And meanwhile, they all say an essential part of happiness is actually volunteering and serving. Chasing desire is going to lead you to dissatisfaction. But serving, volunteering as an RI instructor, somehow brings you happiness. It's a counterintuitive thing, and I know that the selfish part of me reacts to that. No! Philippians 2 verse 4 says, don't be obsessed with getting what you want, getting your own way. Forget about yourself long enough to help others. Forget about yourself long enough to lend a hand. And the F word in that verse is really important. Because if you sign up for RI or you sign up to serve in the kitchen because, okay, I want to be happy, I'm going to sign up and do RI, it won't work. You'll get there and think, I'm not happy, these kids are brats, I have to do the dishes. You have to forget about yourself. It can't be about you. You have to forget about happiness. It can't be about, I'm going to do this to get that. One day, you'll wake up then and you'll say, hey, I forgot about gaining the whole world. I just went out to and now I've got a contentment I could never purchase. You can't catch happiness. Serve others and happiness will catch you. Why does this work? Happiness is a side effect of other things. Happiness is a side effect of other things. When you go and chase other things, happiness is the side effect. If you chase happiness, you can't get it because it's a side effect. Remember, we've talked about being pack animals? Even us introverts, when we find our pack, our community, it lifts our mood, our mental health, everything. We're pack animals. We need a bag to carry, a pack to carry. We need a responsibility to find. We need a purpose beyond ourselves. And when we find that, we find meaning. We're pack animals. We've got to be ready to pack our bags. We need to be moving towards some goal, getting somewhere, giving ourselves to something bigger, someone bigger, to find contentment. And serving, it grows compassion in you. When you serve others, you become grateful for what you have because you realise what other people don't have. And then you have a community that will care for you. No wonder Jesus concluded our reading with this. Now that you know all this about serving, you will be blessed when you do it. You'll be blessed when you do it. But hang on, Paul. I serve and I'm miserable. I'm resentful and I have to do everything. It's easy for me to say this, but sometimes we're sitting there and we're thinking, oh man, I'm the one carrying the load. Is this really working? I want us to know the difference as well between serving and slaving. Sometimes the scriptures don't make that difference very clear, but other passages, it does make it very clear. God has not called you to slavery. We aren't made to be slaves to others. That's an unequal power balance. Service, voluntary service, is an act of your will. It's an act of compassion and love. It's a subtle but huge difference. Domestic violence and other abuse situations are a result of one person living by the mantra, happiness comes when I get what I want. And the other person, because of their good heart, living by the mantra, happiness comes from serving. And then the first person making the second person their slave. And it might not just be a person, it might be a whole group. It might be a whole nation that they have made their slave. Because they're thinking, I'm going to get what I want, and I'm going to make everyone else my slave to get there. So this idea, happiness comes when I get what I want, it seems like just a benign, childish thing. Oh, yeah. But it's actually the mantra of dictators, narcissists, and child molesters. And it has to be challenged. If you find yourself pressed into slavery, find the strength to stand up for yourself, or the community that can stand up for you and with you. So that's on the extreme level. But if you're feeling resentment, like I serve and I don't know that I find the joy in that, then maybe you're not getting the needs that you have met, and you need to work on your boundaries. I've said before, Jesus says, love others as you love yourself. The as is really important, and it's really central. And it shows us there's like a balance there. It's really difficult to love others unless you know that you're loved yourself. In 2 Corinthians 8:13, Paul puts it this way: I don't want you to give so much that you become poor while others become rich, but that there is an equality. No power imbalances and equality. I'm challenged by that to say, okay, where do I need to serve more and more? Wants, needs, slave servants, pack animals. The other thing I've discovered after years of service is that volunteering cures you of naive notions of how to help others. Volunteering cures you of naive notions of how to help others. If you spend time with the volunteers down at the Breakfast Club who help people who are homeless, you will find that they are no-nonsense people. They have their boundaries set. They exhibit tough love. Why? Because the broken people that they deal with are broken. And they will take advantage of you and press you into slavery to get what they want. Do you hear that? Most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, people who are suffering because there's brokenness in their life. And often at the heart of that brokenness is this mantra: happiness will come when I get what I want. And so what are they focused on? What they want. The next drug high, the next gambling high. Whatever their immediate desire is. And I'm not trying to be judgmental here, we all are like this. These are people who are broken by the system, from broken families. They've been used, abused, and they're spat out. And sometimes us nice Christians think that just by being nice we will solve their problems. But to grow, people need to make those transitions from want to need, from desire to service, from slavery to voluntary. And we all need to make those journeys. And they are huge journeys. And they actually come from tough love. That's what we do as parents with our children. We actually show our children how to make those transitions. But if you haven't been parented well, then you take them into your adult life. That's tough love. Love that looks like a cross. A love that directs us from desires to needs. A love that tries to give people agency to free them from slavery. That wants to help them find their pack, not their gang. So as much as the Breakfast Club are no-nonsense people, you cannot fault their compassion. Working long hours, late into the night, they just keep turning up for their people. So it's really important to understand that part of service. moving beyond naive solutions and saying, okay, service is going to be tough. And we've all got to go through those transformations. And the secret is, forget about myself long enough. And that is the work of a lifetime. Our reading today is John's version of the communion. And it's right on the eve of the cross. Jesus is just about to die. And it says this: Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. I.e., he knew he was about to die. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them till the end. He loved them till the end. The love that Jesus has for them to the end wasn't simply that he's going to wash their feet. It was going all the way to the cross. He loved them to the end. His love to the end was being the servant for us all, dying on the cross. In John's Gospel, communion actually doesn't have any bread and wine. You might not have picked that up. If you go back and read John 13 and onwards, there's no bread and wine. The bread is talked about in John 6, around the feeding of the 5,000. In John, the central act of communion is washing feet. The servant's job. John is saying that foot washing and bread breaking symbolise the same thing: Jesus' service for us. And I heard someone say, if the church had grabbed onto foot washing rather than bread breaking, we might not argue so much about who has the right to do it. If it's like, oh, I don't want the right to wash your feet. And then just before Jesus puts the towel on, we have this most remarkable sentence. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his feet. Jesus knew he was great. He was above all. That he had come from God and he was returning to God. So, knowing that, he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. Where does this radical act of service come from in Jesus? It comes from the very nature of who God and Jesus is. Jesus knew who he was, Lord of all, from the Father. And yet he goes and washes their feet. By his actions, he screams at us, see what the heart of God is. The pagan gods created humans to be their slaves, to do all the dirty jobs. We have a God who does the hardest job of all for us. He takes off his outer garments. He reveals his Father's Day undies, and he washes their feet. He is stripped of his clothes, nailed to the cross, and washes away our sins, our hurts, our bitterness, our brokenness, our dysfunction, our resentments. Why should we serve? Because we serve the greatest servant of all. If we want to be like Jesus, as he tells us to be in this passage, then we need to be like Jesus. If we want to have the nature of God, then we need to practice what is at the very heart of the nature of God. Service, self-giving love, the greatest gift that anyone can give. I've told you about the time I went to visit my friend up in Emerald. And we drove there, and we were staying there, and my friend got up early and washed my car. And it completely undid me. He was this friend just giving self-giving love. It's the power to transform the human heart, the power to transform the world. Now, I know most of you. We don't have a problem with service in this church. I know that most of you serve, and in fact we said goodbye this week to two great servants, Jan Ross and Vera Harrison. Right at the centre of both of their tributes was how they served. How they served. But maybe God has a word for you today about slavery and service and going, or wants and needs, or loving others as you love yourself. Maybe you're in a position of thinking, who is my pack? Where is my pack? Or I'd better get packed. And losing that naivety. Meanwhile, some of you might say, I'm beyond my serving days. And I don't want you to feel guilty about that. Rest is part of God's design. Rest and think about how you could encourage or pray for someone. I reckon if you don't know what to do anymore because you're too old or you don't know where to start, one phone call, one email, one text message every week sent to someone to encourage them for what they do. Wow, that would be a great act of service. What if we all just did one message a week? Maybe we can then go to two. When we serve others, we're actually serving God. And to really blow your mind, something to go away and think about. If serving is something that we all need to do for the goodness of our soul, to be fit for heaven, then we needed a world with problems to be fixed, and a world with people to be helped, and a world with suffering to be alleviated. Wow. Let's pray. Lord God, it would be good if we had a religion where we just came and God filled our needs and God filled our wants so we could go home feeling pumped up and good. But we have a God who challenges the very basis of that understanding of life. Who says that's not quite going to work. In fact, it's not going to work at all. And instead, doesn't just tell us to serve. He comes and lives the life of a servant. Going all the way to the cross to deal with our most pressing problems of all, our suffering, our dying, our bitterness, our brokenness, and saying, I can take that. I can deal with it. Just be willing to give it to me, to give yourself to me. And then join me in serving this world, serving one another, patching it up, putting it back together. And we'll wake up with smiles on our faces. Friends for the journey. Comfort in our loss. Lord, thank you that you are the great servant.